name is Megan Van Harn, and this is Abe, and today we're going to be demonstrating manual restraints. So the first thing that you want to remember is when doing manual restraints, you want to go from the least severe to the most severe based on what your horse's needs are and what your procedures that you're doing that you need a twitch for or a manual restraint for. So the main manual restraints that we're going to be using are verbal, which is just talking to your horse and saying, getting aggressive if you have to growl with your voice. And then you're going to go to halter and lead rope, to chain over the nose, and then you have lip chains and lip twines that you can use. Then you might use an actual twitch on the upper nose part, and then you have a shoulder roll, and then finally you have a leg lift if you're working on a leg. Your last resort for any restraint would be chemical, and I'll explain those later on. Okay, so the first manual restraint that you're always going to use is a halter and lead rope. This is effective for most horses. In the Western industry, we also like to use rope halters just because they have knots that are up on the nose here that hit pressure points that are a little bit easier. These aren't used in dressage or hunter jumper because that's just not the way that they work their industry, but for Western, they work really well for groundwork techniques and things like that. The other first immediate manual restraint that you have is actually a verbal restraint. A lot of horses listen to grunts or like things like that when you get angry with them, and then or like slight yelling. That sounds really bad, but like some of them react really well to just getting growled at once in a while. The first manual restraint I'm going to demonstrate today is a chain over the nose. With a chain over the nose, you want to make sure that when you do it, you go over the noseband and not straight across the nose, and then when you clip it up on the top here, you want to make sure that your clip is to the outside and not the inside so it doesn't rub against their face. You also want to make sure that you never stand directly in front of your horse, as you don't want them to get worried or bolt and run you over. And then you also want to make sure that you're not making too much noise when you're putting the chain through the halter. And then once again with that clip to the outside, and then come back over here. And you want to make sure that you have just enough of these lengths over here. So we go 4 to 6 is about the normal length, and then just make sure it's tight and ready to go. Okay, and then to take it off, you once again come to the other side of your horse, unclip the top of it, pull it back through, trying to make as little noise as possible. And there you go. Alright, the next manual restraint I'm going to be demonstrating is a lip chain. This is a step up from the chain over the nose, and it's quite similar to the lip twine. So once again, you're going to feed this through, making as little noise as possible. Cross over to the other side of your horse, and you're going to go under the chin this time, but you're going to put it through this side of the rein, and then clip it to the top up here. And then you're going to cross back over to the other side of your horse. You're going to make sure you have enough space, and then you're going to put 2 fingers in there and I like to leave my pointer out and then my pinky out, and then put my thumb in. Then you're going to slide it up under his lip towards the top of his gums right there, and then you're going to pull with slight downward pressure just to keep it in his mouth, and then hold it for 3 seconds as he's already enjoying that. And then to remove it, you're just going to take the pressure off and let that go, put it under his chin, cross back over, unclip it from up here, once again making as little noise as possible, and then just slide it out of that side as well. The next manual restraint I'm going to show you is a lip twine. So this is similar to the lip chain, except we use a smaller piece of rope. Here we have twine especially for this purpose. You could use baler twine or anything like that. So you're going to come across this side right here. If you're using regular twine, you can always just tie a knot over here, but this has a convenient loop to stick it through. So you're going to stick it through and attach it to this side of the halter, and come back over here, and you're going to feed it through this ring on this side. And then just like with the lip chain, you're going to put your fingers through here and then slide this up underneath his upper lip to the top of his gums, and then pull with slight downward pressure just to hold it in place. And then to let it go, you're just going to pull it out of his mouth, and then just pull it off this side of your halter. There you go. Okay, so the next manual restraint I'm going to show you is called a twitch. Right here we have our William Woods made twitch. They're made out of an axe handle with rope attached to the end of it. So what you're going to do to apply this rope twitch is you're going to stick 3 of your fingers in. I like to leave my pinky and my thumb out, or put my thumb in. It depends on which horse I'm twitching. But then you're going to grab a big chunk of their upper nose, their upper lip right here, and then slide the rope off of your hand. And then I like to keep the twitch under the crook of my elbow just to keep it tight and in place, so that way I still have a good hold on it. And then you're going to get that nice and tight. And then once you're ready, you're going to come back here and you're going to hold the 2 hands as you're responsible. If this horse gets loose and starts swinging the twitch around, it could hurt people around you. And then just gently loosen it up and make sure you touch his lips, so that way he knows that he did a good job. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is twitches. Like I've explained before, William Woods has this homemade twitch, which is basically just an axe handle with a rope attached to it. You have 3 types of twitches mainly, and they're going to be a rope twitch like this one. You can have one with a chain attached to the end of it, which we don't commonly use, and then there's one called a humane twitch, which has a shorter handle, and it basically grabs your nose, and then you can wrap this rope around the end of the handle and then clip it to your halter, which is really important and easy to use if you're by yourself doing clipping, things like that. Okay, so one other twitch that is used throughout the equine industry, but we do not use it here, is an ear twitch. So we like to hold ears, like that's fine, but a lot of people like to take hold and twist ears either direction to get the horse's attention and to help them hold their head still. We don't use it because it does damage a lot of the cartilage in the ears, and it can make a horse very head shy. You also have to remember that there are 3 stages to twitching. So the first 0 to 5 minutes or so is just basically a distraction. After that, you hit 5 to 10 minutes, which puts them in an analgesic stage and makes them feel really good about themselves while you're doing all of your clipping. But then after that, from 10 to 12 minutes is kind of a different range where you start hitting the pain stage, and it kind of becomes an overload, and they call this the blow stage. Your max at that point would be 15 minutes, and you should definitely start a timer when you're doing clipping or whatever else it is that you're doing that involves a twitch, because once they hit that 10 to 12 max of 15 minutes, they're going to hit a blow stage, and at that point, if the twitch isn't off of them, they're going to explode, and then you're going to have bigger issues than just whatever it was that you were trying to do with the twitch in the first place. There are a couple horses that won't blow at the blow stage. They'll just calmly react to it, and at that point you have to worry about cutting off the circulation to their nose and possibly killing off their nose and making it become necrotic tissue that just rests on their face and will eventually fall off. So you always have to worry about that. Another thing that you want to make sure of is when you have a handler holding a twitch, that they know the responsibilities that come along with that. Because when you do twitch a horse, if they hit that blow stage and they explode, or the person lets go of that twitch and your horse has a little explosion and they start swinging that around, that's very dangerous for your handler or your vet or your farrier or whoever is working on the horse at that point in time. So you want to make sure that they know their responsibilities. And like I showed you before, you want to make sure that you have your stance out away from your horse, so that way you have a good grip, and you always want to hold with 2 hands just to make sure that you have your twitch in hand and that you're not going to let go and you've got a good grip. The next manual restraint I'm going to be showing you is called the shoulder roll. This is something that we do just in like a quick instance where we need to grab their attention and we don't really have anything else on us. All this takes is your hands. This is very hard on the human hand, so it can be done for very long, but it works for quick snaps of attention grabbing moments. So what you're going to do is you're going to pinch some of the skin on the neck here, and then you're going to take it in your fingers and you're going to roll it over, and as you can see, it kind of like sways them off to that other side, and like I said, it's just a really quick attention grabber. And then when you're done, you want to make sure that you pat that area so they're not nervous about you touching it. Okay, so the next manual restraint I'm going to be showing you is called a leg lift. 2 important things to remember when you're doing a leg lift is never do it on a hind leg, and then just to make sure that you're doing it on the correct leg, so where your leg lift is actually effective and you're not just standing there holding a leg for no good reason. There are other things to remember when you're doing a leg lift is when you pick up your leg, you want to make sure that you have both hands on the hoof, and then you want to keep your toe pointed upwards so that way they can't get leverage to slam their foot back down. You also want to make sure that your legs are spread apart so that way you have a good stance in case they do start pulling on you, and you want to be slightly rocked back so you have that extra leverage. And then your pairs for leg lifts are going to be, so if you're working on an opposite front leg, you're obviously going to pick up the opposite front leg and never take up a hind leg like I said before. But when you are working on a hind leg, you want to pick up the same side front leg so that way they're not being able to pick up that back leg. Okay, so the last resort when you're coming to restraints for a horse are chemical restraints. So we have 3 that we commonly use here. The first one is going to be Rompin. It can be given an IV or IM, and it's going to be 1 to 4 cc's for that. The next one that we're going to give would be Ace Promazine, which is, once again, 1 to 4 cc's, and that can be given IV or IM. The last one that we use is called the Tomidine. That's only 1/4 to 1/2 cc's, and that's given IV. Once again, these are last resort for restraints on your horse, so you should try using the twitch or whatever else you can go through just to make sure that that is a last resort and you're not just using that because you need to get it done super fast. You're also going to want to wait at least 10 to 15 minutes if you're giving a chemical restraint IV, and then it's probably going to be 15 to 20 if you're giving an IM. Some ways that you're going to know that they're sedated is a lot of droopy ears. He kind of looks sedated even though he's not. And then he's going to hang his head a lot lower and be a little bit more wobbly in his knees and things like that. So you got to be careful that you don't overdose them because they can get real drunk looking, and that's exactly how they're going to look. And you got to be really careful when you're leading them back to their stall by having someone hold their tail just to help them keep their balance a little bit better. Some things you want to keep in mind when you're doing manual restraints are some safety concerns, especially because this is a point where sometimes they're uncomfortable and you just want to make sure that they're not going to attack you or do anything like that because you're in the wrong spot or your handler's in the wrong spot. So when you have a handler, generally you want to make sure that they're on the same side as you, and you want to make sure that they know when you're about to do something so that way they can be prepared if the horse reacts to it. For majority of my video, I'm not worried about where my handler is just because videoing purposes it's easier to see when she stands out of the way. Another thing you want to remember is that you never want to stand directly in front of your horse, as if they do get irritated or they have that fight or flight response, you don't want them to run over you. You also want to make sure that you keep your face clear of things like their mouth, especially when you're twitching, or their feet when you're doing a leg lift or things like that. Another thing that you want to remember is that you want to have all of your stuff prepared and ready to go before you administer either a chemical restraint or a twitch or a lip twine or any of the manual restraints really, and then just make sure that you have that stuff ready to go so that way when you do twitch them, you're all ready to go and you can just start right away and then get it done quicker so they don't have the twitch on for quite as long. Alright, so that's how you do manual restraints on your horse. Abe and I just want to thank you for watching our video and hope that they help you to do some manual restraints on your horse when they're needed.